rise jails. This one is the city and county of San Francisco. It's their sort of second jail in San Bruno. It's outside of, I don't think it's even in San Francisco County. That's in San Mateo County. How about that? But it's theirs. And Sheriff Hennessy there, he's about to retire, but he has, and had very particular ideas about jail design. His downtown jail had a kind of generically similar housing unit on this circular model. So you're looking at two housing units grouped together. Each one has its own recreation yard. This is where the officers would be located to look both ways. And you'll see that this is, as I show you the pictures, you'll see in a minute, that this is a hybrid of direct and indirect supervision. So there's a hard shell location for an officer, in theory, only at night. During the day, an officer down here would there'd either be one on both sides or there'd either be one or two officers down here directly supervising the inmates, and at night there'd be one above, kind of watching over everything and backing up a rover who would go around and check how the inmates were doing in their cells. In the middle of this square are I think we're looking at classrooms here. On one level there are classrooms, another level has medical and other services and so on. And again, the inmates are able to circulate right across the hall, use this corridor, and they're under camera surveillance to make sure they get to where they're going.
Excuse me.
Yes?
One second, I'm going to ask a question that was asked earlier. Do you know how big of an area that size of jail covers?
I don't have it off the top of my head, but this is quite compact and is not occupying the kind of extensive area that the facilities we were looking at before.
Yeah. Did you see where it is?
Huh?
Did it stretch over a block?
Well, it's kind of sort of up in the hills. I had an old, they had a nasty old
So
jail.
it didn't have a normal street grid system around it? Or
It doesn't actually. But it would be easy enough for me to figure out what the site
It's a
is.
residential neighborhood, really high residential neighborhood. Drive through there,
You have to drive through it to get up to it, but then once you're up there, you're not really surrounded by anything. It's sort of a hilltop. Yeah.
And then are most of the housing units 30 inmate units, or?
I think they're 48 each, and you get two of them, makes 96. I think. I can check that too. I counted
Or is
them.
there a standard as we're going through all the slides as to how big the housing units typically are?
Yeah, I think 48 is a little bit old-fashioned now. I think you're seeing more typically in the range of 64 to 80 inmates supervised.
Use the microphone?
Like,
Thank you.
Yeah, the question was how big are these housing units, how many inmates in each one? And some of the examples that I've showed earlier on, I think are typically having about 64 inmates per housing unit. The experience with direct supervision for medium security inmates is that up to 80 can work with one officer. So when you're kind of pushing out the envelope on efficiency, it's somewhere in the 64 to 80 range, depending on the classification. So I'm standing in the glass bubble looking into the day room, and I'm looking at cells. There's a walkway here, and I'm looking at the glass fronts of cells. You sort of saw that in one of the other pictures, but I'll show you as you get closer. So this is the glass bubble. This is where the staff can see everything, and the monitors looking at different sides and the door controls. The view, the glass bubble wraps around. The staff can look down into the day room and across at the cells. And this is looking in the glass front of one of the cells. You're seeing two bunks. I think in this case, looks like an accessible toilet. And you're seeing a slit window, which I'd like to show you how that works. Because if you remember that circular plan, It actually incorporated just like a utility access way around the entire circular perimeter with all of the plumbing and the ducting exposed and accessible out here. Sheriff Hennessy just felt so strongly that he didn't want maintenance staff having to go in and shut down a unit or shut down a cell. So it's completely accessible. The cell window is right here, and the inmate can look across through this sort of semi-frosted glass. They get light, they get a little bit of view. It's an interesting kind of innovative arrangement. Not widely imitated. I think this actually is more expensive than Sheriff Hennessy would admit, but it's an interesting way. This is a plan of the Snohomish County Jail. Some of you in the jail task force I know have visited it. Who visited it? Because I'm going to stand here and present it, and you know a lot more about it than I do, so maybe you'll help me here. But this, oops, oh my goodness, this floor is made up of 4 housing units, or I think, are they separated here, or are they connected here? It's retractable. Okay, so they can be subdivided, or they can be connected. And it's got exercise courtyards here. Each side has access to exercise courtyard. There are some support services. I think those are those classrooms accessible, or meeting program rooms? I think I can read it now. It says multi-purpose room. So that most of the services that inmates need are right there on the floor with them. There's also other floors with functions like visiting and intake and things like that. And this is the housing unit. It's light, it's bright. I'm so sorry. The officer is right there in the housing unit. That's the officer's desk. Can see pretty much everything, I believe. Was the visibility as good as it looks in the picture? Yeah. So this is a facility, I think, with about double the number of beds that you're talking about. So something on the order of half this size would be about the scale of your building. I don't know. Thinking round numbers. Nicely appointed kind of public lobby areas and waiting areas, electronic video visiting. This is the visitor side. The inmate doesn't have to leave the housing unit to participate. Now I'd like to show you the first one that I'm showing you in Hillsborough County, Captain Parrish's facility, Major Parrish's facility. Is his take on how to build something inexpensively if you've got the land. He thought if you built something like a big barn, and if it was tall enough, you could expose the ceiling and the inmates wouldn't be able to kind of get up and do any mischief in it. So you get a big volume, you get a lot of natural light, and it's essentially a flexible open dorm with bunk areas and dining and program areas that you see here. It's very simple dormitory-like setting, which he finds effective for medium security. So even as high as medium security, he didn't feel the need to spend.
More like, what's a medium security convict in there for? Like DUI or like rob a store?
Okay, Wendy Jones is going to help me here, but I'll stick my neck out. I'll stick my neck out first. Generally, unless the offense is extremely serious, it isn't so much about offense, because you can have people who are accused of murder who are behaving perfectly well in the facility, and you can have people who are accused of very low-level crimes who are completely out of control and need to be confined and constricted. So there's a notion in jail management called behavioral-based classification, but you do have to, I mean, if someone's got a very serious offense, then they're facing very serious consequences and they may be an escape risk, so you're going to have to take offense into account to some extent. But a medium security inmate is one who you trust to a certain degree. They're not likely to cause a lot of mischief, but they do need a level of control. They're not minimum security that you can pretty much trust a trustee or someone who can be allowed to use tools or work in the kitchen or, you know, kind of walk around completely unescorted. Okay, now I've dug my hole, so help me here.
Yeah, it's a combination of things. There's a process we go through to classify somebody. It includes their age. A lot of it is institutional behavior, how they behave when they're in the facility after they're sobered up, and their mental health, chemical dependency issues, the kind of criminal history they have, the current crime they're in, and it's a compilation and there's a bunch of risk factors. If you'd like, I can forward you a copy of that.
Can I ask you this, on the ground floor where you had a bunch, you know, a whole bunch of people together, and then on the upper floors we had some higher security.
Yeah.
So was any of that medium or high
Well,
security?
they're in the big dormitory room that you might have seen on the first floor,
Yeah.
back into the corner.
Yeah.
That has a mix of minimum and medium.
Okay.
Most of our medium security guys are on second floor.
Okay.
And then third floor is for special needs, max and females.
Okay.
Most of our minimum security folks are at the work center.
Okay.
So, and they're oftentimes the trustees and they're on the work crews. Medium securities actually sometimes can be trustees in the big jail. So there was, they need a little bit more supervision, but, so you're not gonna let them wander around without, you wouldn't have a dormitory unit with medium security offenders unless you had a direct supervision unit.
Yeah, and
You gotta have somebody watch.
this is.
I wouldn't want that job, I'm sorry.
Comes with a lot of training.
You know, the officers we've talked to who've made a transition from an old indirect supervision jail where they were pushing buttons to a direct supervision jail have generally found it to be much more satisfying to work in direct supervision and much less stressful.
Right?
And much safer.
What?
It becomes much safer.
Safe?
You start building the relationships with the offenders.
That's pretty universal, all the jails we visit, the preferences the officers are is direct.
But you know what? Your response is not that surprising. As the idea was catching on, people couldn't believe it, you know? It just was not, it was so counterintuitive. And the first one did it, and then people came to visit them and say, oh my gosh, this really does work. Well, maybe we could take this back and make it work. And gradually, there were enough examples that it didn't become so crazy anymore, or didn't seem so crazy. Here's just another example of a work release facility, generically probably constructed not that differently from yours. I thought the housing units had a lot of kind of nice space and light, so I thought you might like to see them. This is kind of an interesting one in San Joaquin County on the same piece of land with the horizontal jail I showed you, but this one is truly minimum secure. It's not locked. It's got a simple cross-shaped plan, and each wing has two sets of little dorm rooms. But it's in the middle where they come together. It's got this big, open, colorful space. They're a little overcrowded, but the room is furnished, well, it does have stainless steel, but it's got a window, it's got a table, it's got stuff. What was your comment? Yeah? It's overcrowded? Yeah, it's overcrowded.
Yeah, it's all right.
They're building a big new addition now, or planning one. Okay, here we go. Now for something completely different. So